time is now?
The timer we were supposed to. Oh.
I have the time here.
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody, to this panel. We are lucky to have with us today Olivér Varhélyi, EU Commissioner for Neighborhood and Enlargement. Commissioner Varhélyi, are you with us? Good afternoon.
We don't see him, but probably he's there. I know, okay,
yes,
he's there.
There's. Good afternoon. I'm just going to turn so I can see you. Good afternoon, Commissioner. Can you hear us?
I can't.
Well, we'll just wait for technical support to...
Try again.
Yes. Commissioner Varhélyi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
That's great. Perhaps we can put the volume a little
up.
higher so we can hear you well as well. Commissioner Varhélyi, thank you for joining us here today at the Met Dialogues. Let us, if I may, perhaps dive right into the questions. Commissioner, earlier this year, the Commission published the new agenda for the Mediterranean. And I think that many people here in the audience of the Met Dialogues have lived through several rounds of neighborhood policy reviews over those years. I think most of us have read the communication. And there is more money, there always is, but perhaps on the qualitative side, could you tell us and our audience, perhaps just in a few points, what the qualitative novelty of this approach is? What is different about this new agenda? What's the new bit in it?
Well, first of all, this new partnership which we are creating with our southern neighborhood is first of all created together. So it's a common effort, not only in terms of its implementation, but also in its design. So this is one big novelty, because we want ownership, and we want Europe to be relevant in the southern neighborhood, which has not always been the case. Being relevant in this period of time means that we should be able to contribute at the very topics which are creating the biggest difficulties for the region to overcome. What do I have in mind? I have in mind, of course, the pandemic, and I have in mind especially the economic recovery after the pandemic. This is a unanimous plea to us from the southern neighborhood, so that Europe should be much more present in that. Europe should also be much more present when it comes to them addressing the long-term, mid-term challenges, like the challenges related to the youth, how to create opportunities for the youth, be it skills, be it jobs, be it long-term social agendas for the youth to be able to feel completely part of the society and also to deliver for their own society. It's the same when it comes to the diversification of the economy. And of course, all this would have to go hand in hand with the reforms that are necessary for any long-term sustainable economy and society in the region. So these are new approaches, significantly new, because I think that what we are delivering in terms of also focusing our investments in these main bottlenecks, we should be able to change the realities on the ground within 4 to 5 years from now.
Thank you, Mr. Varhélyi. Let's talk about COVID. You mentioned COVID and the pandemic. It's the second year that MED is affected by the pandemic. And this year is better because we have the vaccine. Still, some of us is able to attend in presence the meeting. I had a look at the vaccination rate of some of the MENA states, and some of them are incredibly low. 38% of people in Tunisia adult people has been fully vaccinated, 34 in Jordan, to arrive at 5.6 in Libya only, 8% in Egypt, and 2% in Syria. All these countries are members of the European Neighborhood Policy. So my question is there a special policy to help those countries to improve the rate vaccine, to get access to the vaccine, and also to help them distribute the vaccine, which is not easy?
Well, in the southern neighborhood, we have been trying to deliver vaccines through the COVAX initiative, where we are the second biggest donor after the US. And we have delivered millions of doses of vaccines, but I do agree with the comment you made implied in your question, and that is the very low uptake. Unfortunately, this is not only in the southern neighborhood that we see that. We also see this in the Eastern Partnership countries, and we also see it in the Balkans, but we also see it even within Europe in some member states. This is a very difficult challenge. Where we can be helpful is to cooperate with our partners to try to convince, through campaigning, the people that the end of the pandemic would only come about if the majority of the population is vaccinated everywhere. Now we see the emergence of an even new variant, Omicron, which can significantly upset not only the COVID and the healthcare situation, but this can create an additional impact, an additional negative impact on the economies of these countries if they don't act rapidly and they don't speed up their vaccination campaign. We, on our side, are ready not only to provide technical assistance, but also to support these vaccination campaigns financially, meaning creating the basic infrastructure like we have done, providing all the equipment that they might need, but also in terms of campaigning for vaccination.
Commissioner Varhélyi, we're moving a little bit into geopolitics. The crisis at the Belarusian border has revealed a number of things. Among other things, it's becoming clear how the distinction the EU makes between the eastern and southern neighborhood is becoming increasingly blurred, but more importantly, it is yet another example of how vulnerable the EU is to external blackmailing. And so my question to you is, well, it's a big question, so I don't expect you to answer it comprehensively, but since we are at a moment where many of us, where there's change in government in Germany, there's elections coming up in France, there's this kind of expectation of a political reckoning in the EU that may lead to more political consensus, perhaps even reform. Maybe could you name the 2 or 3 priority things that you believe would need to happen in order to reduce the EU's vulnerability to external blackmail, such as happened in the Belarusian case?
Well, let me make a distinction between the vulnerability of the EU and the vulnerability of our neighborhood. I can answer your question when it comes to how to reduce the vulnerabilities in the neighborhood. This is my portfolio. And my conclusion already is that, of course, if our neighborhood is less vulnerable, we're going to be also less vulnerable. We meaning the EU. In our neighborhood, be it the East, be it the South, we have put one word front and center into our action when it comes to working with the neighborhood, and that is resilience. Resilience meaning resilience in terms of governance, in terms of solidity of the state structures and the democratization of the states around us, but also it means resilience when it comes to the society and when it comes to the economy. One of the biggest vulnerability of our region is the economic one, through which they are prone to external pressure. Now, if you want me to answer on the specific question of Belarus, where the blackmailing comes from within the country, What I can tell you is our best strategy is to stay resilient and to stay very clear that we are not lowering the guard in front of any external pressure. This is why it is important to support Poland, to support the Baltic member states, and be very clear towards Belarus and its leadership that not only we will not give in to any pressure, but on the contrary, we are ready to retaliate in a very effective and fast manner. And some of it was very clear, some of it is still coming, and we have other measures in mind as well, should these not be enough.
But if I may, I mean, so apparently right now the EU's ability to foster resilience in the neighborhood is based on more on the need to look out for the resilience inside the EU, no? So is that where?
What do you mean?
Yeah, I'm saying that all this, when you mention the concept of resilience that cuts across all the different EU policy documents over the last years, no? It's all good and well, but it seems that the EU right now, and this crisis shows it, and other crises have before that, that there is this integrity gap within the EU that prevents it from fostering, from showing itself as a foreign policy actor that is actually in a position to foster resilience abroad. So in a way, maybe we should more look at home in this sense and foster resilience within the EU in order to enable us to do it outside.
No, I argue with your conclusion. I think it's on the contrary. If the Belarusian case has shown something, is that the member states have been not only united, but extremely swift and very consequential in their actions. So I argue with that. We have a clear, united front in the EU. I see no frictions within. On the contrary, what I see is that this time we've been able to move very effectively.
I will like to move from Belarus to Mediterranean, and talking about migrants, I want to add some numbers. I like numbers that help me to understand the problems. In 2001, so far, 1,646 people died or went missing trying to cross the Mediterranean from the south countries to the north country. And since 2014, total dead or missing is 22,932 people. The central Mediterranean is the deadliest route. So I would like to ask you, which is the answer of the EU to that numbers? Because fighting irregular migration, fighting smugglers is not enough. Building a wall into the sea is not possible. So what has been done as so far didn't work or didn't work enough. So I want to know your ideas about that, about how to try to govern this problem.
Well, yes, it's a challenge, and this is why, with the renewal of our partnership with the southern neighborhood, it was, I think, much easier to agree with our southern partners that this is a common challenge. And the challenge is the very extensive network of smugglers, a very extensive network of organized crime represented by the smugglers. Sometimes they are even financing terror organizations. And the lack of capacities on the side of our southern partners to defend their borders. And therefore, we are providing support for them to be able to address these challenges. This is why it is very important to continue our work with the Libyan Border and Coast Guard. This is why it is important to continue and raise our game with the work with the Tunisian Border and Coast Guard. And this is why it is very important to continue and even extend our cooperation with Egypt. It is only through that if we can prevent people from getting on the sea, that we can save lives. And this is what we should be focusing on.
Don't you think that some legal kind of way of moving from south to north should be implemented to help people who have right to come safely?
The biggest mistake is to mix legal with illegal migration, because legal migration is called immigration, and those member states or societies who would need, for economic reasons, immigrants to work and integrate into their societies, have always had this possibility by granting work permits, work visas, and this is the safest way of doing that, but this is their choice. Now, to mix this with illegal migration, meaning that once they arrive, no matter if they are arriving legally or illegally, their status should be regularized, means an additional pull factor, meaning an additional major risk of life for those who are departing, and means a tremendous boost for the smugglers and for the organized crime groups.
Commissioner, the space for civil society in the southern neighborhood has been shrinking these past few years. And the COVID pandemic has made things worse, from emergency legislation over increased opportunities for digital surveillance. It is getting increasingly difficult for human rights defenders and civil societies at large to continue their work in an undisturbed manner. So now we all know this ranks very highly, at least in discourse on the EU's agenda. How are you planning to counter this trend? What's the plan? Ideally, if you could answer in the most concrete terms possible, how you plan to make sure that the political and financial support these people need is actually reaching them.
Well, we are continuing our cooperation with the civil society organizations throughout the southern neighborhood. And we have been also increasing, even the budget has decreased, but we have been increasing our funding for this cooperation, because we think that these societies will only change if the civil society is strong and can work. And this is a constant item on our agenda when we discuss with our partners. And this is why also reaching out to the youth and providing opportunities for the youth locally will strengthen this work.
And if I may ask, and this is prominent in your bilateral conversations, but how about those environments where foreign funding is illegal? How do you make sure that, how do you make sure that the support reaches civil society organizations? I mean, is this part of the funding going to be more prominent, including in volume terms?
In volume terms, as I told you, we have raised our contribution there. But I don't understand your question. In the southern neighborhood, our funding reaches the civil society organizations, so we didn't have that problem.
Speaking about investment, 2 days ago, the European Commission launched an ambitious plan called Global Gateway, basically a roadmap up to 300 billion until 2027 to support around the world investment in infrastructure, something similar to what China did already with Belt and Road Initiative. Somebody thinks that the European Union just want to copy China without the same means, but I think that maybe there is also the ambitions to do to maybe put less money but more quality, at least listening to von der Leyen. You comment this initiative. You were in Jordan. You comment saying that the investment of this global gateway will start from our neighborhood, and especially up to 30 billion will be mobilized in public and private investment for the southern neighborhood. You were in Jordan because 2 big projects are already going on. So I would like to know, how does it work? How the private money goes together with the public money? And can you give some example of projects, how they are chosen, what they are affecting, if they respect, I think so, the green sustainability? Tell us more about that.
Yes. So the 30 billion euros is everything we can mobilize as investment. You have seen our proposal from last year and also the economic and investment plan from this year for the region, where we have 7 billion euros of grant funding. And we would like to use some of this also to be blended with the guarantee financing and also to mobilize not only our international financial partners, so the EBRD, the EIB, the IMF, the World Bank, but also to mobilize as much as we can the investment agencies of the member states. And on top of this, of course, to convince our companies to come and invest in the areas that you can see in the economic and investment plans. In the economic and investment plans, we have front-loaded those areas which are of European priorities, but which are the main bottlenecks in front of a modern society and economy in these regions. And I was very pleased to see the big overlap between our ideas. Look at the green agenda. In each and every single country of the southern neighborhood, renewable investments in renewable energy is very high on the agenda, and this is where we will, I hope, very quickly roll out major projects, how to create new major capacities for renewable energy generation, including the generation of green hydrogen, and how to create new links, basically electricity grids towards Europe to provide reliable energy resources, additional energy resources for Europe. This work will only be happening on the ground if we have interest from the private sector. This also means that reforms for the creation of an investors' climate based on the rule of law goes ahead in these countries, because otherwise it will be also very difficult to convince our private investors to come along and to create all these investments. It's going to be a very complex exercise, but I see, judging from Jordan, you have seen the 2 big projects that we are front-loading now, the King Hussein Bridge that is connecting Jordan with the West Bank, and the Aqaba-Amman water desalination plan and water conveyor to feed Amman with fresh water, where water is the biggest challenge. Or I could look into Egypt, the new green sprinkling system for the agriculture, and I could go on. We have a lot of projects in the pipeline that we hope to deliver very, very soon. And I forgot to answer your question when it comes to a competition with China. It's not a competition, because what Europe is offering, no one else does. We're offering grants as opposed to loans. We are offering additional economic opportunities, and we are offering long-term prosperity, growth and jobs for these countries with no strings attached. Our only plea is the investors' climate, and of course that the reforms leading to a sustainable society goes on, hand in hand with all these investments.
Commissioner, we have many more questions, but unfortunately we've come to the end of the time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.